Hey everybody, it looks like I'm on both Instagram and Facebook, so I'm so excited for this week. This is going to be super exciting. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Danielle Massi, licensed psychotherapist and intuitive shadow worker. And today I'm going to share something that is super exciting for me, which is how to unlock your spiritual gifts. And it's so important for all of us to recognize that first and foremost, we are inherently spiritual beings. From birth, you were put on this planet to follow out a mission, to do something, and to be here spiritually, and you chose that. Your soul actually picked out what it was that it was going to do before it even got here. And so don't for a second think that you don't have gifts or that you don't have the capacity to do some of the things that you think other people can do, like talk to spirits or to get downloads or to have your business blow up because of the access of spirit. You can do all those things. You have that ability, and I'm going to teach you how a little bit today. I think I'm going to break this into a two-part thing because when I was writing up what I wanted to share, I couldn't stop writing. There's just so much that wants to come through on this topic. So this might be a part one and a part two. So part one today is going to be really helping you understand how we get stopped from leaning into our spiritual selves and 5 basic things to help you break free of that and to help you expand your spiritual gifts. So stay buckled up. This is going to be fun. First, before we get into that, we need to talk about why so many of us feel like we don't have spiritual capabilities and gifts. It's not because we don't have them. Like I've said, you're born with that. What happens is over time you forget. And there are some very specific reasons why we forget. The first one is that we are taught not to remember these things. We're taught to literally forget them. We're taught over time that we're not supposed to think this way or act out of the box or talk to our imaginary friends who are probably not imaginary friends but actually spirit guides. We're taught that we're weird or quirky when we do those things. And it's mostly out of fear of the people who are telling us that we shouldn't do that stuff. Their fear blocks our ability to tap into our gifts, and so in order to kind of come over to the status quo, we convince ourselves that we're wrong. We convince ourselves that we're not seeing what we're actually seeing, or we're not hearing what we're hearing. Kids are so in tune, they're so highly attuned and so sensitive, and it's not because they're necessarily more spiritual than adults are, it's because they haven't fully forgotten yet. They're in the process of forgetting, and hopefully not forgetting, depending on who is around them and supporting them. There is a darker entity that exists throughout the world known as the darkness. And the darkness, it feeds off of fear. It feeds off of us kind of being like mindless zombies and drones. And the darkness is a part of why we're convinced that we're supposed to do things in a certain way. Have you ever questioned why we go to work for a 9 to 5? It's not because we want to. It's not because in your heart you're like, man, those are the hours I really need to be logging in at my job and doing all this stuff. It's because it's the most sensitive time for all of us, is when we have our energy. It's when we should be doing things like meditating and grounding, connecting in and using our gifts, and yet we don't, because our energy is taken away from us during those times. The darkness is really vast, and so many people are bought into it because of fear. And people refer to it as the Matrix. So I'll use that terminology too, because that makes a lot of sense, especially for those of you guys who have seen the movie, The Matrix. The Matrix essentially is this program that we are all tapped into, that we're just running all the time. And this program tells you that you need to eat foods that they advertise, which are really low vibrational because it's mostly fast food or things that you can get very quickly so you can get back to that 9 to 5 job and work until you're burnt out. And so you fill your body with toxins, and then you're exhausted. So you're exhausted from your job, you're exhausted from the food that you're eating, you're probably not getting enough water. And if you do, you probably drink it out of a plastic bottle because that's loaded with BPAs, and so more toxins go into your body. And then you're taught that you're supposed to be tuned out on your phone all day and totally locked into social media, because otherwise who are you? The Matrix traps us, and that is just a method of the darkness getting to all of us and stopping our spiritual ascension, stopping our gifts. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so I want to teach all of you that are watching right now, everybody that's watching the replay, how to start tapping into your spiritual gifts, because you have them. For those of you guys who are watching this right now, let me know if you have any gifts, if you're still learning about it, or if this is brand new for you, because I would love to hear sort of where you're at in this whole process. As the darkness sort of taps into us, there's so many different ways that it's able to access us. It's our food, it's our water, it's fluoride in our toothpaste, it's alcohol, which is literally called spirits because it helps darker entities latch onto you and make you act in ways that you otherwise wouldn't. There's just so much, and social media is a huge piece of that. It's a huge piece of that because we're just so drained and so numb. And TV is the same thing. We're always fitting into boxes. We're always fitting into boxes of like, this is what I have to do, and this is how I'm supposed to show up. Rachel said, yeah, I've tapped into more in the past couple of years, living much more intentionally these days to keep my vibe higher. Good for you. Jillian said, yes, and want to know more. It's coming, I promise. I'm going to give you all the things to start popping you open. So let's start with the tools to really help you break free from the matrix, break free from the darkness, and tap into the spirituality that you've always had access to. Oh, the other thing I want to know is if you guys remember as a kid, if you had any gifts. Like if you had an imaginary friend, or if your mom heard you talking to ghosts or to things that weren't there, or you ever said anything weird or crazy to a parent. Like, but Grandma Tina says this, and it's like, Grandma Tina passed before you were born. How do you know that? Put it in the comments so I can find out for sure. Okay, so the first thing, my first rule for stepping into your spiritual process is to start challenging the matrix. All the stuff that I said before about the ways that the matrix keeps us down, like having a 9-to-5 job where we're controlled by bosses and the hierarchy keeps us small, drinking out of plastic bottles, eating foods that are really low vibration, and not getting enough greens, which we need to be ingesting nature. We need to be connected in with the earth. Doing things like totally vegging out on social media and just getting lost in reality TV, like the Real Housewives or the Kardashians or any of these stories. And remember, these are all stories. All the media is doing when you watch different events, whether it's the news or whatever show you've binge watched for a million years, is there's an agenda being pushed. We want you to think in a certain way, and so we're going to give you things that help reinforce what you already believe. And so then you watch it, and you have a bias, and it settles deep within you, and now nothing can break you out of it, which is perfect for the Matrix. The Matrix does not want you to think. It doesn't want you to be a free thinker. It wants you to use the words it uses and to log into the programs that it gives you and to tap into the social media it decides that you should be on. It's all sort of laid out for you. You don't have as much control of your life as you think you do. And then you go to your 9-to-5 job and you eat your shitty food and don't get enough water and go to sleep, and it's horrible. So breaking free from that is the first step. I want you to recognize how much of that you're bought into, and then take teeny tiny little steps to start to challenge it. Little things. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, like ditching plastic water bottles and switching to ones that are made of glass. It's an easy switch. When you're drinking out of a glass bottle, you're not ingesting any toxins, and so it's just clearer, and being mindful of stuff like that. Avoiding fluoride in your toothpaste. You guys know that my background is in cognitive neuroscience, and so there's a lot of research that's been shown for fluoride to clog up what's known as the pineal gland. The pineal gland is a tiny little gland right at the front of the brain, in the prefrontal cortex, and it's also known as the third eye in the spiritual community. And that gland is key for accessing your spiritual gifts. And so when it's clogged up and clouded because of toxins and things like dairy, what happens is it begins to calcify and to harden. And what needs to happen is it needs to vibrate pretty frequently at a high intensity in order for you to access the gifts that you have. And so doing things that really help you break free from those set tasks. You could also scale back on your use of social media. My guides always tell me I'm supposed to produce and not consume, and I hear it all the time. Produce content, let people see where you are, tell them about shadow work and change and how to access your gifts, but don't consume it. Don't sit there and mindlessly scroll. Don't sit there and listen to all these things because they're there to kind of get you back into the routine where an hour later you look up and go, how did I do that? How did I lose all that time? It's numbing. Everything that the Matrix gives us is numbing and it's fear-based, and that just feeds the darkness, and we do not want that at all. So really making sure to notice the ways in which you get caught up in this stuff. I'm a survivor of Kardashian-aholicism. Like, I was obsessed with watching the Kardashians for the longest time, and it was the best way for me to self-sabotage. I get lost in that stuff because it was watching something that was like they're so normal and yet so unable to access because of the amount of money that they have, and it's all meant to do the same things. It's numbing and it's placating, and it just stops you from being able to be the most heightened version of who you are. The next thing that's on my list, after you really start to think about the ways in which you kind of can break free from the Matrix's hold, is to start learning. Ingest as much content that challenges the beliefs that you have right now as humanly possible. Start listening to podcasts that challenge your beliefs about this reality. The weirder, the better. Once you find a podcast that's like, let's talk about the aliens that exist, listen to it. Let it challenge you on purpose. Because what happens when we listen to things on a regular basis is we're usually looking for things that confirm our beliefs. We're looking for the stuff that reinforces the beliefs that we have because we want to feel right. Human beings always want to feel right. But the problem with that is there's not a lot of growth that comes from that space. You're not going to learn a lot about yourself if you're listening to things that reinforce what you already know. Listen to some weird shit. Listen to stuff that you would never normally get into. Find a podcast that talks about the Akashic Records, which, if you've never heard of it, let it blow your mind and allow that to take you to somewhere else. And hopefully you have a lot of moments that make you feel like the whole world is a lie, or you're confused, or that can't possibly be true, because that means that you're starting to expand a bit. You're starting to open up the possibilities, and you're breaking free of the rigidity of that matrix. You're breaking free from being sort of a slave or controlled by this piece. So as much as you can adjust. So podcasts, things like Gaia, the network, if you guys have seen Gaia, it's amazing. And it's just all different people talking about things that are sort of counterculture. So Eastern medicine instead of our traditional Western medicine. Talking about gut health and how that's more important than other pieces that we think are so intentional and so necessary for our health. Talking about spirituality and how to include meditation and mantra and how to manifest things, and Gaia is incredible. Books, anything by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I mean, obviously coming from a cognitive neuroscience background, I love all the things that he does, but I think it's just amazing to see the science behind it, as well as where to just kind of jump into trust in the universe. And he does a really nice balance of those two things. Anything by Gabby Bernstein is super great, especially if you're new into this world. She has so many books for different stages in this process. And most recently, I just read a book by Shaman Direct called Spirit Hacking that was phenomenal. It will make you question a lot of your beliefs. So everything that I'm talking about right now, it'll make you go, how could that possibly be real? And by the end of it, you're like, no, there's something to that. I need to pay attention to this a little bit more for sure. And so I would absolutely recommend just breaking yourself free from what you believe by learning. Ingest as much as humanly possible. And if you're following step 1 and you're scaling back from social media and TV and starting to really absorb things that are helpful for you, this would be a good way to do it, because instead of binge watching Grey's Anatomy or This Is Us, guilty by the way, this is one of the new things I'm breaking away from, binge read a book that's going to challenge everything that you've ever known on purpose. Break yourself out of these beliefs and ideals. So the next one on my list is to start adding in a daily practice every single day. And just some kind of healing practice that's going to get you in the habit of actually coming back home to here. Most of us have been taught since we were very young to get out of our body, to externalize, to be somewhere else. And in that, in kind of removing ourselves from the equation and being somewhere else, we lost our connection to our spirituality. We lost our connection to ourselves. There's 3 main facets that I look for when I'm connecting in and just meditating on a daily basis. I connect into the earth by grounding down into Mama Gaia and her energy. I connect up and connect with my spirit guides and everything that I channel from up above. And then I come back home to me, because my body is the vessel that connects me between those 2 things. And so once those three are in perfect alignment, then I can do anything that I want to do, manifest anything that I want to come through, and it just bam happens like that. If I need guidance on something, like, should I be eating that? Because even though technically it's supposed to be something that's healthy, I feel this allergic reaction in my body. Is that what's causing it? I can ask anything. So a daily practice is really helpful because you start to understand yourself again in the way that you did when you were like 3 or 4 years old, where you just knew who you were. And even though you understood nothing about the world, you were sure of yourself. You were so sure. So doing things like yoga every single day to move the body. And it doesn't have to be traditional yoga if you don't want it to be. It could be something like Kundalini yoga. It could be just sitting in your room and meditating, if that feels right. It could be doing daily sound healing. One of the things I like doing when I first got into this world and really started to bust myself wide open was I would listen to third eye opening sound healing meditations every day. And for like half an hour or an hour, I would just lie down and I would let the frequency of those sort of sit right over my head. I'd put headphones on, or I would put my phone on speaker right over my head. And what those do is they shake that pineal gland that I was talking about before to help decalcify it. And the frequency of them changes the frequency of your body. It changes the wavelengths of the movement that's going through your body. And so you notice things happening fast. So that was really, really cool. But I wouldn't recommend that if you're sort of like, I'm still a little afraid of this stuff, because it does make things break wide open for sure. But you could just look on a quick search for third eye opening meditations and you'll find a ton. Anything else that feels really good for you that's just a daily practice, like gratitude journaling or anything along those lines, to just find your way back home. That would be the next one that I would recommend for sure. And then there's one more I'm going to mention that might be something you've never heard of before, so I'll just explain it a little bit. It's called fire scrying. So what you do, this is a candle from a friend of mine. I'll put her info down here. It smells amazing. There's howlite actually in the candle. And the candle's meant to help you burn things away. That's why it's called catharsis. Fire scrying is when you put yourself into a room with nothing else, just nice and quiet, no distractions, no TV or music or anything, pure silence. And what you do is you light the flame of the candle and you just look at it. And you do nothing else. And you do that for, say, 5 minutes the first time that you do it. And then maybe 10 times. And every time you're trying to challenge yourself to do it a little bit longer. The reason is because when there are no distractions and your eyes are sort of set on a flame, what happens is you're pulling in some elemental properties, some like spirit guides who are brought in with the fire, and you're also clearing out the mind space. So anything you need to know, anything you need to understand or to see, will find you in that silence. You'll learn about parts of yourself that you thought was unexplainable or couldn't happen. It's just incredible. So fire scrying would be the last one I'd recommend for that. And if anybody watching this has other examples, put them in the chat and I'll say them out loud, because there's so many different ways to practice this. And I want to hear from you guys. And then the next one I want to share with you guys is I want you to, for step 4, to start speaking to your spirit guides out loud. Now, some of you guys watching this are like, what the hell are spirit guides? Other people are like, I don't know who my spirit guides are. For those of you guys who feel one of those two things, I'm going to give you a quick breakdown. Every one of us has a team of spirits who are helping us throughout this life. And as they do, they nudge us in one direction or the other, whether it's subtle nudges or things that are a little bit more intense and intentional. So this is where you hear people talk about things like angel numbers, or seeing butterflies, or finding dimes head up places, or feeling a chill run down their back. When we connect in with our spirit guides and actually know how to speak with them, we get so much more information and so many more nudges, so that we know when we're on the right path and we know when we're straying away from the right path. So connecting in with your spirit guides is key. You don't need to know who they are. You don't. You just need to know that they're there and that you are going to talk to them out loud every single day. So what you do is, while you're sitting by yourself, whether you're in the car driving somewhere, or if you have a big decision you need to make, what you can do is you can close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths in and out, And you just say out loud, spirit guides, allow me to feel you within my body. And then you wait. And what will happen is you'll feel some kind of nudge, something will kind of like pluck. It'll feel like a tingle or like just a little bit of movement or energy. You'll feel it. And if you don't, what you'll do is you'll say out loud, still with your eyes closed, spirit guides, please raise the volume. Let me feel you within my body. And you say that again and again until you feel it, which if you're new to this could be 2 or 3 times, but shouldn't be too much more than that. Eventually you're going to feel it pretty strongly. And sort of like you're raising the volume up. Our spirit guides always wait for us to give the okay, and they never want to make us feel scared or overwhelmed. So you're only going to raise the volume as much as you're comfortable. It's completely up to you and it's at your discretion. Just so you guys know, when you're connecting with spirit guides who you're connecting with, here are the types of things that you might come across. Some spirit guides are loved ones who have passed on, people who've crossed over to the other side. So it could be like a father, grandfather, grandmother, great aunt, a friend from high school that you lost, could be anyone. They could be on your spirit guide team. There are animals who are spirit guides. Some of them are just animals that you've had as pets, or others could be things like your power animal, where you're just always really connected to horses or to snakes. And those animals act as spirit guides, helping you. There are ancestors that you have. The ancestors who passed on from your lineage, like way, way back, that you've never met or connected with, they help guide your every move on this earth. They are always with you, always working through you. And they always want you to focus on healing the bloodlines and healing all the generational trauma and curses and karmic loops and all that stuff. So your ancestors are a really profound piece. This one might trip some of you up, so just bear with me. But remember what I said about learning things that are new and make you kind of go, huh? Where does that come from? Because this will be that. We've all had past lives. And in those past lives, we've lived in a variety of different places and been different people. And we've had ancestors. And those ancestors are coming through to me right now. Sorry, sometimes when they come through, it makes me want to sneeze. The ancestors that you've had in your past lives want to connect with you just as much as your ancestors from this life. So for instance, if you had a past life as a Native American woman, what will happen is those ancestors will be able to work through you and help you do things like heal the land, maybe move back to the place where they once settled, to reconnect with the earth and to grow your own food and crops and stuff like that. So those ancestors are a part of your spirit guide team. You also have angels, or like really prominent figures like goddesses or gods, people like Isis, Durga, Kali. There's so many, Kuan Yin, Jesus. There are so many, it's vast. And you don't need to actually know who they are on your team. You just need to know that they're there. And over time, as you get more comfortable with them, you can start asking for them to show you who they are or having them tell you. And then there's also plants that can act as your spirit guides. You can actually feel a really strong connection with, say, the tree that was in your backyard in your childhood home, and know that you were sort of meant to be near it. And so as a kid, you just went and sat under that tree every day, and you brought your journal or your notepad and you would color, or you just always wanted to be near it. It's because that plant was a spirit guide for you. And if those are spirit guides for you, you might be more pulled to do things like be out in nature all the time and to connect with the earth. So let me know if you guys have any questions about spirit guides, because I know that was a lot to kind of chew on. But the main piece I want you to remember is that you can talk to them as often as you want. So after you do that bit where you close your eyes and you connect in with them and you tell them to kind of turn up the volume so that you can feel them fully within your body, what I want you to do next after that is I want you to just start talking to them out loud all the time. So driving the car and you're like, spirit guides, I've got a date coming up tomorrow night. Do you think this person is actually right for me? Should I even go? Is this a good move? And then just listen. Just see what happens in your body. It might be nothing. It might be that 11:11 pulls your attention on the clock on the car at that exact moment. It might be that a cardinal lands on your window. So just start looking for it. And as you do that and you start getting more and more and opening yourself up to it, the stronger it's going to get. And then the last piece I'm going to tell you guys about today before we do part 2 next time is to use tools to amplify your connection to spirit. Because in the beginning, when it's brand new, it can feel like you're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You're lost in the desert. You don't know what's going on or how to access any of this stuff, and it feels kind of scary. So bring in some tools to help you, to make you feel more comfortable in doing it. So you can bring in things like candles, where during your meditations, you can really just breathe them in and they help enhance your connection. I use these, which I'll put the link for. So these are from Sovereign Soul Medicine. My friend Latoya makes these, and she Reiki infuses all of them and puts crystals in them. So it just kind of amplifies everything. You can use essential oils. My favorites are Pravaha elixirs, but they're a company in France, so that's kind of crazy. So I will tag my other friend who makes amazing essential oils here in the States through Young Living. She always makes me little blends, and they're just incredible. Her name's Carrie. You can do things like use crystals, and there's so many kinds of crystals. So like this one is a fire quartz, and it's an orb. I like this one because it burns stuff away, and I do shadow work. So anytime I need to burn away darker, heavier energies, this is the one that I'm playing with. And it also reminds me of that movie. Oh geez, what's the name of it? Oh no, I'm going to forget it, with David Bowie. Labyrinth. Oh geez, I'm really dating myself now because that's from the 80s. Labyrinth, he's always like messing around with the ball, so I feel like David Bowie when I do this, which is cool. There's also points. So this one's like a clear quartz point. There's like full stones that are like sort of like rough. This is an amethyst, just like a rough stone. There's palm stones that you can keep in your hands. So they're kind of nice and flat. This one's tiger's eye. You can just kind of hold on to it. I'm glad somebody else knows Labyrinth, because I was like, man, I'm really making myself, I'm so dating myself right now, but it's such a good movie. But that one, again, is one that makes you feel fear. So maybe I shouldn't love that movie because it helps us tie into the Matrix and feel like we need to be afraid. That's a conversation for a whole other time. There's also little tumbler stones. This one is like a big chunk of abundance stones that I have. So this one's like honey calcite. Tumbler stones are teeny, teeny, tiny, and you can use them to help accelerate things. And then next thing I would recommend is oracle cards. Because oracle cards are a really good way when you're first getting into this world and starting to expand your spiritual connection, to just start to kind of play around with speaking to spirit in a way that feels good. So my starter deck that I usually recommend for most people when they're starting is Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Life deck. The reason why I love this one in the beginning is because it's just so simple. It's really easy to understand. The messages are so streamlined and easy to absorb, and it's just beautiful. It's an easy, easy deck. So Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Life deck. If you're a little bit more on the advanced side and you want to do something a little bit heavier, another deck that I love is the Isis deck, Isis Oracle deck. This is definitely for someone who's a little bit further along. All of Alana Fairchild's decks are a little bit... So I know those are the first 5 things that I'm